which is why we have with us Manisha Kapoor, CEO and Secretary General, ASCII. In fact, we'd like to thank ASCII for being our support partner. Thank you so much, and it's lovely to see you, Manisha. With that, our speakers are all set, our audience is all set, so let's bring the speakers on stage. I'd like to please invite Abhinav Narula, Vice President, Marketing Head, Make My Trip, and Siddharth Gopalakrishnan, Chief Customer and Marketing Officer, Netcore Cloud. Can the applause also travel from that side to this side? Well, that's what we're talking about. And with that, Manisha, over to you.
Thank you, Kavya. Thank you so much. And thank you, MMA, Monica, for inviting me, and you and Mayur both working, I think, closely with all of us to set this conversation up. I was, of course, extremely happy because in both the previous panels, the word trust and the word ASCII was used. So, couldn't have asked for a better kind of setting. And I think the reassurance that, ASCII and trust is on everyone's mind. And as we are navigating, I think all the challenges, not just with AI that we are discussing, but, all the challenges that are happening with marketing today. So we are looking at responsible AI. And I think there is no one that, if we ask saying, does AI need, to have guardrails? Does it need to be responsible? I don't think we're going to get an answer saying that, no, it's not important. I think everyone is going to say, of course, it's important. And of course, the use of AI should be done with a certain degree of responsibility, with certain guardrails put in place. So I don't think that's really the starting point of the discussion that we want to have. For us, it's about, with AI coming in and changing so many things, have the rules kept up? And possibly the answer to that is also no. And maybe we don't really have a set of very deeply understood rules because it's new. It's new for all of us as we are navigating through this. And therefore, a lot of it is to do with certain principles or judgment which comes in. And the real test of these principles, judgment, and the fact that we say, of course, we need to be responsible, is put to test when the rubber hits the road, when you are making decisions every day about what campaigns to put out, how to create campaigns, how to test with consumers, whom to target. Those are the real questions that possibly come up in discussions around, what we need to do with AI. So I think that is what we want to focus this conversation on, which is really what happens when the rubber hits the road, what happens when we are all in principle committed to AI, but still what are the challenges in interpreting it and in executing it on a day-to-day basis. So very glad to have you both join this conversation. And maybe to begin, let's start with, I think just setting into this topic saying, there's of course so much possible today with AI, but like to hear from both of you, I mean, what are you using AI for today that would have been inconceivable even a year ago? What are some of those things that, that you're taking for granted in a way today that you would not have thought of?
Yeah, thank you for having me, firstly, MMA team. I'm actually quite cognizant of the time, and that bell was quite intimidating. But before I come to the marketer's perspective on this, I just want to say that overall, from a consumer behavior perspective, what was inconceivable for me a year back is the trust which AI and LLMs have really won over from human beings in the last 1 year. We are using, so consumers used to be hesitant in sharing their email addresses online, and now we have them sharing their deepest, darkest secrets at 1 a.m. in the night. We are using LLMs as agony aunts, as therapists, as doctors, and in some cases as more attentive husbands and wives. So that's for me something that's really, really shocking, the pace at which AI has won over consumer trust. Now, specifically and thanks for asking a positive question to begin with before you put us under the spotlight. So from a marketer's perspective, I think the number one use case of AI is simply personalization, and the level and depth at which we are able to achieve personalization today was maybe not inconceivable, but definitely unexecutable in your bag. And I'll share a very simple example from my category, which is the travel category. So till about a year back, if you did a search of, let's say, a hotel in Goa, and it was a typical abandoned cart use case, a marketing campaign would simply look like, let's say, a personalized discount code on a user cohort, depending whether you're a new user or an existing user, etc. And I'd simply say that here's a discount coupon for you to come back and complete your purchase. Today, not only are we able to understand the user context a lot better, but we're able to personalize and curate content at scale, speaking to that user context. So that same Goa search, if it was for, let's say, 2 adults and 1 child, I would recommend kid-friendly properties rated well by family travelers to you. If it was a search in a leisure destination, and I understand that you're a premium user, I would be able to recommend beachfront properties to you. If you were doing that search for 60 days advance to your travel date, I would be able to recommend early booking deals to you. So it's not that these signals weren't available to us in the past, but you could not potentially curate content at that scale, at that sort of filtration, and really serve it to the consumer. So personalization has really for us moved from hard-coded cohorts to really individual user level whispers that you're able to send to the consumer. So that's the big leap to my mind.
Thanks. And Siddharth, for you.
Firstly, thanks for having me here. It's good because there are two perspectives. There is a perspective of the brand and the marketer, and then there is a platform like us. So at Netcore Cloud, we are a marketing automation platform which basically allow automation, segmentation, and reaching customers at scale across whether it's a web app, your WhatsApp, RCS, SMS, whatever channels that you name. From our side, I think frankly, the last 6 months, more than even the 12 months or 18 months, I think couldn't have been more exciting. 2 counts. Number one, if I take just use cases which brands like, say Abhinav mentioned, what use cases are now become possible. We genuinely believe hitherto impossible problems of marketing can now potentially be solved. For example, personalization has been spoken about till death, maybe even 5 years ago. But most marketing teams couldn't actually get it done because it was not about whether we can create 100 segments or not. But it's about saying, can we create 10,000 pieces of content at faster scale, validate them and then send them out. So the content creation was always a challenge because there was a creative agencies and it's still a fundamentally creative manual and approval process that is there. But that has changed quite dramatically. So can we create 100 segments? Absolutely, yes. But now can we create many more, can we generate automated briefs to create creatives, whether it is, and do those creatives across a form factor of Meta, Google, web, app, email, right, faster? I think that's basically changed dramatically. So that's one thing that has become super exciting, and we are seeing brands also experiment a lot with that. And as platforms, we are therefore also forced to now accelerate the development on all of this, right? And collaborate a lot more with AI native creative agencies and so on and so forth, right? Like an Imagine Studio on the Google side. The second thing which has been really exciting for us as platform players is, our product roadmaps, which could be 2 years, 2 years product roadmap can now be crunched into 6 months. I think that is really is going to change the game because now features and functionality don't become as important. What becomes important is your domain expertise, the ability to actually deliver value, not just efficiency, but effectiveness for our customers. And that's the game that all of us are trying to play. So very, very exciting times. And thank you for starting on that note.
No, absolutely. And I think, it's important to acknowledge that AI is here to stay. It is here to kind of, I think, really empower the marketing world with so many possibilities that possibly one would have dreamt of, as you said. I mean, that was, like, for example, personalization was always an ambition, but you were really personalizing for groups and not personalizing for people or individuals. And, so much of that is possible now. And so I think truly exciting times for all of us to live in. The follow-up question always is that, when you're going at this breakneck speed, when all your dreams are in a sense coming true, is there something which you have already tried or that you're perhaps on the brink of experimenting with that also kind of raises certain questions on is this the right thing to do, or is this the right way to do something like this? So what are some of those kind of questions or doubts that are still, perhaps unresolved, in your minds? And what are some of those conversations perhaps happening within your teams?
Yeah. No, so again, just continuing on that thought, what we're able to do a lot easily now is help users discover better price, better, easier discovery of the right SKU, easier discovery of the right booking window, the right platform, the right channel. So multiple ways in which the consumer journey is getting solved. I think that the responsibility that comes along with that power for marketeers is what persuasions do you really use to communicate these right products to the right user at the right time, right? Now, pricing, for example, is such a powerful lever, but if marketers, sort of fall into the temptations of using it blindly, then it can very honestly fall into dark patterns. That is a very widely regulated space as well now. So what kind of persuasion is the marketer using? Is it genuinely helping the user find meaningful value? Or is it creating a false sense of scarcity, false sense of urgency, where the consumer promise is unlikely to be fulfilled in the end? Right? That's something where the onus entirely lies on the marketer still. Along with that, even if it's not, let's say, a complete misdirection, but how honestly are you speaking to the user from a guideline standpoint, from a disclaimer standpoint? And even more important than both of these, I feel, especially for a brand like us, what's extremely important is what kind of signals are you using to personalize and speak to the user? Are they first-party explicit signals that the user has given to you upfront? Or are you estimating, reading third-party signals, or making the consumer feel like he's being stalked? Right? There's a very fine line between personalization and really just stalking the user. You want them to feel that you've understood the user context, but not really that you're watching over them without their explicit content. So I think those are some of the things where the responsibility lies on the marketer to ensure that AI use isn't abused to some extent.
I think just to add to that, and perhaps, Siddharth, when you speak, because you would have also seen several categories. I mean, as you were speaking, I was also thinking of categories like healthcare, for example, where there is a lot of consumer vulnerability, that the system may know of, and therefore, how do some of those guardrails work, and what are some of those concerns?
No, I think it's a great question because with greater ability to drive scale, personalization, and faster things, what is clearly happening that we are seeing across brands, and we serve a lot of banking and financial services players, some healthcare players. I think both places there is a heavy. We are seeing a much higher level of paranoia on what is kosher and what is not, because it's the data part, gathering part, communication part has become so much easier that it is very easy to abuse it. So can we actually put guardrails and at a platform and at an automation level? Because there's no way humans will be able to keep those guardrails alive. I mean, it's very difficult to actually do it at that scale. So whether it is the content that actually goes out, whether the brand is represented in the most appropriate way, whether the layers on channels like a Meta, Google, etc., the whitelisting that actually process that exists, can you continue to maintain that at that scale? So there are a few practical challenges which I think people have become more paranoid about. So on one side, marketers want the Ferraris so that everything can happen fast, but at the same time they want bicycle brakes, right? Because that's where the compliance teams and the other teams are also becoming much more important. One of the biggest conversations we are now faced with is everyone is asking, how do you really deal with consent management, right? Because consent management is across all, whether a web is different and an app is different and each channel is different, and but all of that from a platform lens, because there is really no other way to solve it at lens.
And so what are the kind of conversations that are happening internally? So when you encounter these kind of questions, so what are you using to resolve it? Is it conversation? Is it looking at perhaps best practices, which possibly are not fully established yet by themselves? So I'm just trying to understand what is the process of setting up these guardrails within the organization, either formally or informally. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, firstly, I think for any reputable brand, if there's a question of compliance, if there's a question of ethics, then it doesn't matter what technology is being used to create that campaign. The campaign ideally will not see the light of the day. If it is seeing the light of the day, then it is more likely to be an error in human judgment and not a problem of the, at least that's the intent. I shouldn't overpromise and say that that's absolutely 100% the case. But at least from a principle standpoint, what goes inside a brand, the way we approach such campaigns is that anything that is consumer facing, the responsibility lies with the humans. It's not the technology that has to ensure that. The way to deliver it in the era of AI, where it's easy for AI to create scenarios where human error is likely to happen. The way to ensure that is to embed all those guardrails, as Siddharth also put it, in the system itself. Right? So, firstly, for example, we have technology today available where the marketer can have a co-pilot in the form of an AI also, who can not only identify content, curate content, but also identify consumer cohorts, identify right campaigns, and suggest briefs to the marketer as well. But it stops at that. At the end of the day, the responsibility of triggering that campaign lies with the marketer as well. We at least aren't setting up any campaigns where AI can trigger communication to the user on its own. So that's the first level of check. The second level of check is for circumstances which are, let's say, sensitive in the form of communication that reaches the user. So could be a disruption due to we are in the era of war. So could be a disruption due to war, could be disruption due to supply, could be a natural calamity, or anything of that sort. Now, anything that is sensitive of this nature, AI is not even, it's not even the scope of AI to curate content for that. And for every other campaign, it's guardrails embedded into the content curation platform itself to ensure that it's following all necessary brand guidelines. So the solution lies in embedding it into the guidelines, but ensuring there's a human in the loop always. That's quite simply the way we look at it.
So Siddharth, is that something which, I mean, you've seen also, therefore, that brands are really depending on the guardrails that the platforms are providing in a sense to, know the right time to trigger certain communication that's happening with consumers?
So I think as often technology follows what is the business need and need of the hour. And I think the business need of the hour is, with scale, please put guardrails in place. I think our job becomes, and the discussions that have happened, in fact, building, the first one was even getting DPDP compliant. I mean, we were the first brands to actually go ahead and get that compliance done. Second was to actually say, with AI getting more and more embedded into our product, what kind of guardrails do each and every brand want? And so therefore, there has to be a customizable layer to those guardrails, because some brands want a lot more approval layers, because the human in the loop, as Abnu said, I think is critical. So we actually, story from us is, 1 year ago, we had made a multi-agent workflow where, the segmentation agent could talk to the insight agent, could talk to the content agent, and then technically you can get campaigns out in a matter of maybe 15, 20 minutes versus days that team spent. Big realization when we started building with brands was to say that, take it easy, go slow, build approval layers at every single place. Add a human interface so that their jobs become easier, because that is never going to go away. And I don't think we want them to go away, because nothing can substitute the judgment that people will bring in. It can just become more efficiently deployed in the 15 or 10% of the cases where you are expecting it to go. So guardrails, in terms of what kind of content goes out, what is ethical, non-ethical is the easier one to actually do, but more around the brand tones, the brand nuances, that's the tougher one, and that's very customized. Those are the kinds of things that have now gotten embedded into the platform. And hopefully then it'll make things a lot more effective going forward.
Yeah. I'm going to ask both of you if you have any examples of near misses or perhaps full misses that may have happened, which led you to certain learnings, and things changed as a result of that internally, or in terms of the way you are looking at AI. So any examples? Because I think with so many experiments, of course, there's so much celebration of what succeeds. But it's also important to talk of some things which may not have worked exactly in the way that we thought they would, and what did we learn from there?
Yeah, fortunately, nothing disastrous. See, from a content standpoint, we had a couple of cases where a few creatives went out. Early days of AI, the human had 6 fingers. The luggage bag was in the air. So those kind of things, innocuous to the end consumer, thankfully. But I think more importantly, use cases where the consumer experience can break. I think one thing that marketers must realize is that the responsibility of using AI to curate content doesn't end with just the generation of content, but it has to continue till the end fulfillment as well. And I'll give you 2 examples. That same example that I was sharing earlier about, let's say, beachfront properties in Goa for your next vacation. Now, that's a very, very personalized curation set that I'm recommending to the user. Now, imagine what I missed to read is that the date that I'm recommending is tomorrow. It's a long weekend. And the user lands on a funnel where everything's sold out and nothing is available. Right? Imagine me recommending an outstation cab to a user in a tier 2 city who's looking for a hotel in a metro city. I said that, hey, that's a small enough route for outstation cab, and I recommend an outstation cab to the user, but that route was just not serviceable. Right? And those are real examples, by the way. So we have guardrails around serviceability, around SKU availability, around right pricing. I'm recommending a price to the user, but you don't want that discount to end up giving 2 rupees incremental to the user in the end case. So I think the larger point that I'd want to establish is just how do you ensure that you're using AI end to end and ensuring that the guardrails are put in place for the user right from content curation till the final booking experience on the platform as well.
I think a lot of examples for sure on making the wrong recommendation, because we never understand the full context of the user. You may be, for a gifting portal, you may be gifting some things at a time or suggesting something at a time when frankly the person has going through a personal tragedy and you'll just not get it right? So that creates a lot more angst than it creates positive surprise. And I think a lot of that, and that's also down to what kind of signals that the AI is capturing, because ultimately it is only building on what signals it is capturing. It's not like it is creating something out of thin air. So signals that are getting captured, a lot more rigor around that. Second is, and therefore the data flows that actually organizations have put in place. I think that is still an evolving process. I don't think anybody has the data right. And that's turning out to be a challenge in terms of effectiveness. The next part is, even if you use that data, how do you actually ensure the timing is right? With banking and financial services, this happens a lot because you don't really know when somebody is in the market looking for something. You just don't know. So how do you get the timing right? So a lot of learning on goof-ups on that front, a lot, right? And sometimes consumer sentiment does get impacted for these brands. So the question is the extent of it, can it be reduced over time? And that's the journey that everybody is on. I don't think anybody has cracked it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think I can see some, like our timer ticking down, so maybe one last question, which is, what are you doing internally within your organization to build the capability for leveraging AI, but to also kind of make sure that it's done in a way that is productive for brands and for consumers? So is there training, is there use case testing, and given the amount of churn that happens in organizations, how are you kind of keeping pace with some of that?
And that's the first build. Yeah, so we already spoke about the processes embedded in the system, so I'm not going to repeat that. I like 2 more points to that. Firstly, I'd say that it's imperative that marketers ensure that the brand voice remains distinct enough. If everyone ends up using the same prompt, then the output that you'll get will also be the same, right? So it's fundamentally important that at a content curation level, your models are trained on your brand tone of voice, on your brand design guidelines, on the way that you typically have been representing a brand in the last whatever history that the brand has, so that the output is distinctive and continues to be so. So that's number 1. The last thing that I'll say is, see, AI at the end of the day is still a bunch of numbers flashing ones and zeros in the back end. The computation is multifold, but it's still ones and zeros, right? And models will optimize for the output that you ask them to optimize for. If you ask them to optimize for conversion, they'll optimize for conversion, they'll find the shortest path to that, and that might erode consumer trust in the process. So the last thing that I'll say is that can marketeers be responsible for ensuring that models are also optimizing for consumer trust by looking at feedback that comes from the consumer, looking at CTRs, looking at feedbacks, looking at complaints, looking at opt-out rates from campaigns. So if all of those things are also embedded into the model, then I think we are using responsible AI for sure.
I think for us, there are two elements. One is internally, a lot of the focus is going around building guardrails and just because building a platform which is multi-sectoral, etc., and building the guardrails is a tough thing. But that's the first, because that question is getting asked a lot more. So a lot of our effort is going internally into understanding what does DPDP actually even mean, what the consent management mean, and so on and so forth. I think from an external standpoint, from our customers, the one question that we are asking them is to say, how many AI recommendations or models have you killed in the last week because your team did not understand why the recommendation was made? Because it's not just a bana diya hai, so now let's actually just go and deploy it. But if the team doesn't understand it, kill it, or it doesn't take the time to an effort to actually understand it. So that's the question that we are asking our customers, because otherwise we are equally liable as they are.
So I think, thank you both of you. There's clearly a lot of food for thought in terms of how we all, go ahead in this great AI march and, take, I think, consumers. We've again heard the word trust so many times, and I think with AI, there's also the opportunity, as you're saying, to actually look at consumers more deeply, understand their feedback, their comments, and be open to that. So thank you very much. I learned a lot, in some of the use cases that both of you spoke about. I hope all of you did too. And once again, thank you very much for joining me in this conversation.